Welcome everyone to another episode of a video interview for The Weight She Carries. My name is Wimbai E. I am the founder of The Weight She Carries. I have with me a very special guest today, Pastor Sandra Baingana. Pastor Sandra, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. I'm glad we're able to do this interview. We connected maybe a week or so, a little over a week ago, when I reached out to you and I'd seen your story, at least parts of your story and your ministry, about really having to, and you share your personal story about being a single mother and having to face rejection, and then building yourself back up and having a ministry along with that. And now you're happily married. And so I loved listening to your story because I loved your transparency. And this month of February, what we're doing is we're trying to reach out to women who have found love after either rejection or heartbreaking disappointment, because we're trying to remind our community of women that it's not the end. Just because you may have had a terrible situation happen, you can still find love. So I'm really glad to have you speaking with me today. All right. So to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. First of all, I would like to correct you. I'm from Uganda, not Kenya.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Why did I think it was... okay. All right. My apologies. So from Uganda.
Uganda and Kenya is very close. So I think you kind of confused that too. Yeah. Pastor Sandra Baingana. I would say initially I was a civil engineer before God called me into full-time ministry. So I'm now fully Pastor Sandra Baingana without putting a stroke of engineer Sandra Baingana. Yes, I'm a mother of 6. I have 4 boys, 2 girls, married to an amazing man, Mr. Baingana Innocent. He's also an engineer, and I am a founder of a ministry called the Roads to Redemption Ministries. Yeah, so I've been in ministry for 2 years. January 2nd, sorry, I made 2 years in ministry. Yeah, and that's it. Maybe another thing I do is that I am a co-CEO with my husband in our company, which is an engineering firm dealing in construction, installation, servicing, and maintenance of lifts, escalators, and car parking systems.
Okay, wonderful. Wow, so you were in engineering before you became a pastor?
Yes.
Okay, wow. Well, we'll get to all that. I want to know about your childhood. How was your upbringing like?
I came from a very humble background. We grew up in a family of 6. My mom and dad were together. He happened to have been this man that is richest on the village, and then one day he went bankrupt and became among the poorest. Like, he moved from glory to grass. Yeah, so in the moment of them moving from those high levels to the low levels, daddy went bankrupt. Mommy moved from being a wife of a rich man to being a wife to one of the poorest men of the village. He lost his job. That costed him a lot, that he was blacklisted. He was a banker. So there were some messes that were done in the bank through his friends, and he was innocently, because he was the manager of the bank, he was held accountable as to why things like that happened without him knowing. So it costed him his entire career. He had to be blacklisted, so he went bankrupt. So mommy, in her brokenness, found Jesus. She went to church. Daddy, in his brokenness, went into drinking. So I grew up being raised by a drinking father and a mother that is broken and finding Jesus, digging for people on the village. So she taught us Jesus at a very young age. She taught us how to dig. We moved from being kids from a very rich school to being in a very poor school and transitioning into the new life that had come ahead of us. So I grew up in that kind of environment, trying to find myself again from that two different worlds. But the beauty with it is I find Jesus along with mommy. So we start moving the journey of salvation together, getting to know God, which ushers me into university, knowing God. So when I hit into single motherhood, I couldn't run away from the presence of God because I grew up in church. So it kept me going up to today. And here I am today. Glory to God.
Wow, wow. It's interesting how, hitting a rough patch
Yeah.
can be the avenue that leads us to getting closer to Jesus. And that's so interesting because for your father, it did something completely different. But for your mother, it just drew her closer to Jesus. And as a result, you were able to witness your mother coming to church and then taking you as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So you kind of move along, and then you touched on becoming a single parent. Was this after university, before, or during university?
After university. Yes, after university. I happened to have dated this young man when I was just done, I think 6 months done with campus, with university. And we were dating for 6.5 years, 6.5 years. So it was quite a good time. We were friends, we were OBs and OGs.
Mm-hmm.
So we came from that place. We used to be the most intelligent in class, like really. So we came from that place whereby we are friends from school to from secondary, from high school to actually being friends at campus. And then he proposes to have a relationship with me. So being that he was this kind of guy, I used to see in class very quiet and very serious with his studies. I used to be attracted to such men, intelligent, hardworking. So I thought, yeah, this is the right one. Very quiet. So I'm like, yeah, this is the right one. So we dated throughout for 6.5 years. But along the way, when I got pregnant, that's when I got to know his true colors.
That's so unfortunate because that's such a long time to be with someone and you think you know them.
Yeah. Time is not enough. I think it goes just beyond that time,
Yeah.
They really say now if I'm trusting someone, they really have to be God's will for you.
Yes. So how old were you now when you fell pregnant?
I was 23. I think I was 23. Yes, I was 20.
Okay, so you find out you're pregnant, and then what's your immediate reaction? Does it take a while to kind of sink in, or immediately did you kind of begin to go through the motions?
It was a mixture of emotions. First of all, I came from a background where I'm a church girl. When I graduated from campus, I found another church away from the home church because I was living in a city now. So I found another church where I was serving, very active in the youth ministry, interpreting for the pastor. I was very active in ministry. So everybody looked up to me, the youth looked up to me, my spiritual parents looked up to me. So I was doing well in ministry. So I'm looking at a church girl who is a virgin and knows the pros and cons of Christianity, that you don't give in to yourself before you don't give in to sex before marriage. So my spouse knew about this, but time came from the blues. I think on the fifth and a half year, he came up and was telling me, you know what, I've been waiting to have sex with you for long. And I think I've waited long enough, and I think I want to have it. So I remember telling him, no, you can't, because I'm a born again Christian, you know me. So he's like, yeah, but even me waiting for this long means I have been patient and I'm not after sex. I love you, So I remember cutting him off because I felt he's going against what I stand for. When I cut him off, we got silent for almost 1 month. So he comes into the city because he was studying. He was studying in a different place, and his course took 6.5 years, by the way, because it was a medic. So he tells me, can we meet after breaking up for 1 month? We are breaking up over the fact that he's giving me an ultimatum, telling me if we do not have this sex, we can't be together. So I'm like, it's fine. Then I'm not worth, if you can't wait for me, then I think you're not worth it. So he tells me, can we have a talk after 1 month of being silent? So I was a very busy person. And I remember telling him, I am a bit busy, but let's see how it will be. But he never knew my home. Each time we were dating, we used to date from out. I want to show you how careful I was, and how really the devil can find you even when you're careful. So I tell him we have to meet out. So all the years we were dating, we always met out. So this day he asks me, can I come and see you? I'm like, no, you can't. So he gets through my friends, gets to know where I stay, and he comes through. So when he came through, I found him at my place, and I'm like, okay, who showed you here? He's like, I had to surprise you. So we get to have a talk, and one thing led to the other. It was really against my will, and then one thing leads to the other, and I find myself pregnant. So when I find out I'm pregnant, I first feel feverish. Getting to hospital, the doctor tells me, congratulations, you are pregnant. I'm already dealing with the fact that I messed up before God as a Christian girl. As if it's not enough, you're giving me other news that I'm pregnant. Oh my God. Now, what was running in my mind was this: my pastor, my parents, the people at church. It wasn't even about me. It was about the society where I am raised. How am I going to answer all these people? So it hit me down. I think it hit me down for like 3 days, but I was very close to my spiritual dad, and I was very active in church. If I'm away for just a day, you could tell. So I knew they were going to ask me, where are you? You're supposed to be doing this. We're not seeing you. So I was accountable. So after 2 days, I cry. I talk to a few friends. They tell me abort. I'm like, no, I was afraid of abortion since I didn't grow up in those streets. And then I talked to that guy, and he's like, you know what, I'm not ready. You need to abort. Since he was a medic, he was telling me, I want to come over and actually help you abort. And I'm like, oh my God, you're a killer. So amidst the confusion, abort, and then I hadn't talked to my mom. I had to talk to my spiritual dad, and I was telling him this is what I'm going through. So he broke down crying. I was also crying, but then he embraced me back. I had to make a confession in church amidst the whole congregation. To me, it wasn't about me being ashamed before them. It was about the fact that I'm trying to be accountable to those that believed in me, the youth. So, but before coming to the pulpit to apologize, to make the repentance, I'd had the one-on-one with God the previous night, and I dealt with it, and I knew that He had forgiven me. Yeah, so coming from a place that God had forgiven me, going to church was not that church should forgive me, because forgiveness doesn't come from God. It was so that I can be accountable. Look here, I've been this girl that you look up to. I've disappointed you. I am sorry. This is what happened, but I'm owning up my mistake. And here I am. So the other question is, where is the man? Where is the man? I'm like, I don't know where he is. So I began dealing with that stigma at church. Oh, you a disappointment. Oh, how can you do this? Oh, you a shame. My spiritual parents were the only people at that time who were very understanding. So you're dealing with a pressure at church, then you're dealing with a pressure at the neighborhood where you stay. Where is the man? And then you're dealing with this pain that this guy is rejecting you after giving him all these years. It was really painful. So it was a mixture of things. Then I'm struggling on how to tell my mom. I think I told mom after 2 weeks, and what kept me going was the fact that my mom embraced the fact that I've been a good girl, I've graduated, I've got good grades, and I'd gotten a job. So she was like, you've been a good girl. I really wouldn't judge you. Let's just pray that this man comes to senses. So mom was very supportive and spiritual. So she led me down that road to redemption. And my spiritual dad also walked with me the road to redemption. And the two of them made it possible for me to become who I am today.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for taking us through those emotions because, I'm thinking about 23 is so young.
Yeah.
And you're just coming into your own. You've just finished university, and your whole life is ahead of you. It's like that moment where it's like, I'm finally now. I feel like an adult. I can now start to build my career or what, those kind of plans. It's like the world is just laid out before you.
Yeah.
And then, this situation comes up. And I think it's so much easier when you have a partner who's going to stick with you and say, okay, you know what, okay, we did this together, we'll walk this path together. But in your case, he didn't want to know anything about it. There's something that you said that I think is so important, is that you wanted to take accountability for the actions, and you knew that God had forgiven you, and that was the first place that you sought forgiveness from. There are many, many women who have found themselves in that situation, and they don't know what to do. And and because they've become a single parent, whether it's from the beginning of their parenthood journey, they've been alone, or somewhere along the way, something happened to the relationship, and they found themselves raising their child or their children alone. So how were you then able to kind of pick yourself up from that point where you've now confessed before the church, you've confessed before God first, but you're still kind of walking out, because in the community, people, as much as we want to believe that the community is going to embrace you, there's still a lot of judgment that faces single mothers. So now, how were you? Here's the baby now. Was it a boy or a girl?
A girl.
Girl. So you have this beautiful baby girl, and she's now here, and you probably still going through some mixed emotions, because there's the joy of motherhood that comes, and then there's also still the shame from the community. So how did you kind of work out those emotions?
I think first of all, confessing in church for everybody to know about my issue. It's like me telling them this is it, so everybody has to deal with it differently. Was a totally different world. Church was a different world, and then home was a different world. When I come back to my house, I'm coming back to this empty house where it's me and my pregnancy. So I'm having two worlds, the worlds of church where I have to put on a mask of a smile, and then back to my home where I remove the mask and begin breaking down to cry, because throughout the pregnancy, we kept fighting with this man. I'm like, you know what, you can't leave me. We've been together, we are friends. And he's withdrawing and withdrawing. So I began breaking down in the night, like looking at myself, and I'm like, what have I become? Because I was this very assertive girl. I knew what I wanted. I was very smart. So it's like I'd reduced myself to something. I was even afraid of going back home for the people in the village to see me. So I'm dealing with this gentleman. I was very, very afraid to become a single mom, because I grew up in a home where there is mommy and daddy, irrespective of the fact that my father was drinking, but he loved me. That was just a weakness. So I grew up where there is mommy and daddy. I didn't know how to be on these streets where it's just me alone. So I was fighting to make the relationship work. I remember I did everything I can to keep this man. I gave him money. He was a student. I graduated. My course was shorter than his. So I graduated, got a job, and he was still in school. So I'm like, I want to see you. Can we meet? He's telling me I don't have transport. I send him transport. He eats the money and doesn't show up. I'm like, why don't you call me? He's like, my phone is down. I buy him a phone. He eats the money and doesn't show up. So, but you're doing all this to cling on him. So I kept calling and pushing for it to happen. It never, the more I pushed him, the more he hurt me the most. So I withdrew, I think at 6 months, I withdrew a bit, and I'm like, I need my sanity back. Meanwhile, I'm praying with my mom. She's saying, okay, maybe he's young and he needs time. So let's pray for him that God may change him. So we embark on fasting journeys. I'm pregnant, but fasting. So at the 6 months, I withdraw a bit, and I'm like, I need my sanity. So after 6 months, again, he comes back from the silence. He comes back, okay, I'm sorry. I think maybe I was also overwhelmed. I am back. So he comes, we talk. He begins visiting me from school. He comes and checks on me. Then he goes to his parents because we're still a student, much as he was a mature man. But I think God bringing him closer to me was from him to tell me, look here, remove your hopes. He is not the one. He's not anywhere close. It's when I find out he wasn't actually a born again Christian. He was lying. I found out he drinks. I found out he smokes. I found out he sleeps with so many girls. So one day he comes back drunk. And then he used to have a lot of passwords in his phone. You couldn't go through it. So one day he comes back very drunk in the night. I check his phone. Oh my God. I found out that he had like 8 girlfriends. 8. Actively.
8.
Yes. Actively sleeping with all of them because you could see the
Wow.
conversations. Now, to a church girl, that is very alarming. I was like, oh my goodness. So now God was trying to show me the other side. Remember, we are fasting with mommy for the man to change. Now I begin seeing the other side of the man. When you're in a long distance relationship, it was long distance. There is a way you can't easily know someone because you just meet, you talk, you hug, you go. Now this was now like God revealing the truth. So I find out now, as if that's not enough, I kind of break up with him for like 2 months, but then I'm afraid of being a single mom. So I again go back to him and say, I am sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah.
for what? So now
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm sorry because I want him back. I can't be a single mom, so I ran back to him. So he becomes boastful. I think he begins to realize I need him. I'm desperate. So again, he comes back. When he came back, I had a maid. I think by the time he came back physically, I'd already given birth. So, but before him coming back after me giving birth, we used to talk. And one day, one of those moments that were very painful for me is when I went into labor pains. I was young. My mom couldn't make it on time. So I am calling my friend to tell him, look here, I'm going through these labor pains. I need you. Just pray for me, like encourage me, talk to me. The guy was drunk. He told me, look here, if I were you, I would take care of pushing my baby and give up on calling me because I don't care. You know, Oh my God. I was going through a lot of pain as I was going through the labor pains, and then someone speaks back at me in such a way I broke down and cried. It began stopping being about the pain that I was crying, but then I was crying because of the words he had told me. I remember going to the hospital room, my room, and I looked through the window. I could have jumped, and I'm like, "Oh, I think I should just jump. How can rejection be to this level? I've grown up in a home where I'm loved. What did I do to be rejected? How can someone? Now, when you're young, you look at the fact that I'm bringing in a baby, someone should be excited. How did they tell me
Yeah.
they don't care whether I'm pushing? So I got so broken. I felt too much. The pain was coming for the baby. The labor pains were intense, but at that point I wasn't even feeling the labor pains. I stopped feeling the labor pains and I began feeling aggressive about the fact that this guy spoke to me like this in such a manner. So I looked through the window and I want to throw myself down. And I look down and I'm like, no, but is it worth it, my baby, and all this? Because I was also looking forward to seeing my baby. I'm like, Sandra, put yourself together. So I push the baby. After pushing him, I call him, I've given birth. What name should I give the baby? He doesn't care. And I'm like, no, I've not gone through all this pain to even beg someone to give a name to my baby. So I gave my baby a name and came out of hospital. So after 3 months of leaving hospital, he comes to check on me again and is apologetic again. So I have a maid by that time. So I go to work and leave him with a maid. I had to go back to work 1 month after the baby is born because I was a single mom. I had to take care of my baby. I was afraid of leaving my job because I may lose it. So I go back to work when my baby is 4 weeks, and this guy comes to check on us and he begins staying at my place. So the last stroke is when I found him trying to sleep with my maid. Now to me that
Oh.
was it. To me that
Oh.
was it. I am like, oh my goodness. So I chase him. I'm like, leave, go. So again, we break up again. And then we come back after 3 months. I'm trying to show you how it was hard for me to let go. I'm fearing to let go because I'm afraid of being a single mom. So I tell
Yeah.
him, get out. So he gets out. I stay alone. I deal with my emotions. And then again, he apologizes. Then I later find out there is a girl he was dating when they were still in high school vacation before going to university. she got pregnant for him and he told her to abort. So when she aborted during their high school days, she lost her uterus in the process of abortion. She was the doctor they went to was a crook, so she lost her uterus, so she can never give birth. So this girl,
Oh.
yes, it was so painful. So this girl didn't realize when, of course, she broke up with a guy when they went to campus, so she forgot about him and moved on. How did she know she loses her uterus? It's when she finally gets married after campus and she can't conceive. So the man, her husband, keeps telling her, "Where is that child? Where is that child?" So one day she tells the guy, "But you're asking me for that child. What if it's you who is the problem?" So the guy was very sure of himself. He took her to hospital. The doctor asks her, "Have you ever aborted in your life?" Because she's afraid of being ashamed in front of her spouse. She says no. The doctor tells her, "You aborted. The person that did that to you messed with your uterus. You don't have a uterus." It was so heartbreaking. So
Oh my
heartbreaking.
goodness.
Yeah, so she loses the marriage because the husband dumped her right in hospital. So when she lost the marriage, now she began looking for my ex. So that she begins dating my ex when
Oh, because he's the one responsible.
yes, she's like, okay, this is happening. So the guy consoles her. He was a good player, consoles her, takes her back. Now the guy is dating me and her and many other girls. So when he came back again after some time, when we reconciled again, I find out again he has a girlfriend. Now by the time I find out about her, he has broken up with her. She's telling him, "I found out you have a woman who just gave birth. I'm going to look for her, find her, and kill her. Because you can't tell me I am now barren. You are out
Yeah.
with women giving birth. I have to kill that woman and her baby. Then I'll kill you too." And she was very determined. So each time this guy came back to my home, God was revealing things. Remember, I was a prayerful woman. My mom was prayerful. So we find out someone is on the look for me. And I'm on Facebook posting my baby, my life. So you could easily locate me. You could easily know where I work. Oh my God, that was too much. That was too much. So we deal with that. Again, we break up. Again, we go back together.
Yes. Yeah. Trying to
back
make it
and
work.
This back and forth is simply because I'm afraid of being a single mom. I can't. I've not lived like that. I am afraid. So it has to work. So again, we break up. So we come back again. He apologizes. By the way, I preached to the girl and she gave her life to Christ. She stopped those mindsets of wanting to kill the guy. We became friends. And later she flew abroad to go out and work. I lost touch with her, but at least by the time I disconnected from her, she had healed. I think my ministry began way before, you know. Yeah, so we became friends later, talks to her, and she was like, "You know what, I think you're good. You don't deserve to pay the sins for that guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, but even you're not worth going to jail because of some guy. You could believe, you could adopt." So we went through a phase with her and she healed and we got better. So again, I reconciled with a guy later. Now, the last stroke for me saying I am done is when my parents begin telling me, "This guy, the father of your child that keeps coming to your home, we need to know him. Can he come and see us? We don't want him to bring anything, no bride price. We just want to know the guy. Who is he?" He stood my parents up, I think, 4 times.
Whoa.
Yes, the fourth time, they had even prepared themselves, preparing physically.
Yeah.
And he switches off his phone. I remember crying and crying and crying. I was reading a book that talks about soul ties, breaking soul ties, departing, like starting afresh. I think I listened to Anita Bynum and she was talking about it. It was a sermon called No More Sheets. So it spoke a lot to me, and she was trying to tell us that you can be single looking for a man, and then you have a relationship this side. So when you come before God, you don't come with another man in your hands. You have to come as you are, like, "You know what, I don't have anyone." So you either drop them or you first sort yourself out before you come before God. So I had to drop it. I dropped it, I cried and talked to God, and I told him, "Look here." Just like that's how I found out about the story of Hagar. I used to read the Bible, but not to understand it so deeply. So I am one day asking God, "Do you even know single moms?" Do you even know we exist? I've grown up in church. I believe in you. I just want one scripture that is going to make me cut this tie, for me to know that you are with me. Apart from you saying in the scriptures, you're with me. Yeah, that's general. I want something that talks about single mothers. So I bump into Hagar. And when Hagar was chased out of Abraham's house and she's in the wilderness crying with her baby, and then God calls from above and tells her, I'm with you, I'll take care of your child. Here is a source of water. It picked me up in a way. I encouraged myself and I'm like, okay. Because we were fasting with mommy throughout this, and the more we fasted, the more the guy got worse. So mommy comes to a point and she tells me, Sandra, each time we have me when I fast, things change. This is different. Each time I'm fasting for you and this guy, things become worse. You keep calling me with outrageous stories. God is telling us, let's change our prayer. Let the prayer be, God, let your will be done. Now, for me, as a young girl at 23, it was hard for me to say, God, let your will be done. So what next? My friends were telling me when you become a single mom, your chances of getting married are very low. So I think him standing up my parents 4 times was it for me to say, okay, God, here I am with my baby, just like Hagar in the wilderness. Take me on. So I embraced single motherhood finally after all the lessons I learned, and picked myself up and told God, let it be a new beginning with me and my baby. And but before making that decision, when my mother was telling me to let go, it was hard for me to let go because my baby had now grown and she was crying out saying, Mommy, I want, when my landlords when my landlord would drive into our compound, his kids used to run to him to hug him. Now my baby could also run to him, Daddy, Daddy, and she runs and hugs him. So I used to hold her back. Don't go, he's not your dad. She could cry until the landlord tells me, let her come. So each time she could go and hug the guy and go with the guy, and the guy is holding her like this, I could cry. I'm like, God, my child needs a father. I'm not going to let go of this man. It has to work out because my child needs a father. So I pushed this relationship. I tried A to Z. By the time I said I am done, I had seen it all. Had seen it all. So eventually I pick myself up, cry a lot, understand that this is new beginnings. I related to Hagar's story a lot. I'm like, God, pick me up from here. Let's move this journey. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm choosing to trust in you. I've crammed you in charge. I've crammed you in church. I've crammed these scriptures, but I've never seen them tangible. I was telling him, I want to see scriptures tangible in my life. So I'm choosing to trust in you to walk this journey with me. And yeah, that's how I picked myself up.
Oh, yeah. It's such a difficult situation to be in. And thank you for being so transparent and taking us through that journey.
You're
Because
welcome.
there's so many women, I'm sure, who can relate to that, just wanting a relationship to work so badly. Because somehow we feel as though, if we can get that man to accept us, then it corrects the situation, and then we can be the complete family, and
Yeah,
so we do all kinds of things to try to and it validates us. you know I think as girls being brought up and in the church and in our community, the presence of a man in your life, it validates you. And now you have this baby, you want the baby to have a father, and he just was not, he just wasn't the person. He
yeah, it
wasn't the
was.
person. Yeah.
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 And I think
Wow.
the most sad bit is when I had to, they call it what? Taking your child to church, the first time they're blessing your child as a new mother, dedicating my baby in church. I was dying for that moment to dedicate my baby with a man besides me. Because as a born again Christian, they expect that much as you messed up, maybe the man is going to marry you eventually. So they don't expect you to say, look here, I'm just here with my child. I don't have a man. So pushing for it and it didn't work out. I think the most breaking point is that time when I had to come to church with my baby in my hands alone. And I'm like, what? It was so painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.